the core issue we're trying to address, right, with these sorts of ideas, is the person who is throwing off warning signs that they're potentially going to harm themselves or others, right? Making direct threats about it. There's a lot of warning signs that can come into this sort of thing, but they haven't actually committed a crime yet, or a serious enough crime that they warrant felony conviction or domestic violence misdemeanor or something along those lines that would permanently keep them from owning guns legally. And so the solution is how do you stop somebody like that? And that's where these red flag laws come in. And then obviously I think as you're talking about here, a lot of gun rights advocates would say involuntary commitment is the better option, right? That's basically what the argument, right?
I think so. I mean, and listen, the downside of that is once you have been involuntarily committed, you lose your right to keep your arms forever, right? It's not temporary. It is a more extreme step. But if we're talking about people who are truly dangerous, either to themselves or others, there already is a process in place by which those individuals can be confined to a mental health facility until they are no longer a danger to themselves or others. And that seems like a more substantial approach. One of the other concerns I have about this, Stephen, is that while I appreciate the fact that a public defender could be appointed, I appreciate, the fact that there are mental health screenings involved here. Those things come with a price, and those things come with personnel. We already have a problem finding enough public defenders in many jurisdictions across this country. Cases are being dismissed because, they don't have enough public defenders to go around. And so you're seeing these lengthy delays and people's rights are being violated. So adding more burdens to an already burdened system concerns me. Something's going to have to give. We just saw the New York State Police Union come out today and say that Governor Hochul's mandating of the use of red flag laws has left them unable to investigate a lot of serious crimes because so many resources are being devoted to going after these supposedly dangerous people and their guns. There's been 1,000% increase in the number of red flag petitions that have been filed over the past year in New York. Some of the New York State Police barracks are running out of room to hold all of the guns that have been confiscated. And the police union is now speaking up. They're not speaking out against red flag laws. I think they want more funding, right, to be able to do both. But this is having an impact. And this is what, strict enforcement of a red flag policy looks like. Even if you're not a gun owner, you should be a little concerned about the impact that this is going to have on public safety. If finite police resources are being devoted to going after, somebody who might be a danger to themselves or others versus somebody who's committed a violent felony. And the same holds true with our mental health system too. Tennessee, like almost every other state, has a shortage of mental health professionals. So if we're now tasking them with doing a mental health screening, not for an involuntary commitment, but to simply take somebody's guns away, again, I worry that at the very least is not a good use of resources. And at the worst, again, may allow some truly dangerous people to do terrible things because, we adopted the idea that, well, if we take their guns away, that solves the problem. Right.
What if the policy is coupled with some sort of mandatory mental health treatment as part of the order? Would that, I'm just trying to get to, is there a potential proposal in this vein of temporary removal of firearms because somebody is a threat to themselves or others that would sort of actually address all of the issues that you just outlined? I mean, because there's obviously are a lot of legitimate issues, and this is a serious topic, right? We're talking about somebody's rights, and we're talking about the safety of the community around them and their own safety as well. And so what, to me, I've always looked at the critiques of red flag laws, and they've seemed like they're addressable because a lot of them are based on the due process concerns. Well, this proposal has a number of ways of trying to address those concerns, but it doesn't hit sort of the overarching critique that you've outlined here of like, well, if this person is really a threat to themselves or others, why would you stop at just removing the firearms? There's obviously other ways that people can kill themselves or other people. We saw this in Texas recently, right? Somebody drove their SUV into a crowd of people and killed killed 8. Is there, is there a way to try and reform these proposals to actually address all of those issues?
I don't think so. I mean, not to my mind. Because again, if the fundamental premise is about removing the gun and not dealing with the individual, then I think we're going in the wrong direction. And red flag laws, by their very nature, are gun centric. Again, they were written by gun control groups. They were, designed by gun control groups. They're not meant to be an all encompassing way to address dangerous people. They're a way to go after what they say are dangerous guns in the hands of people who may or may not be a danger. So I don't think you can square that circle. I really don't, because, and I understand why, again, these red flag laws are somewhat popular with politicians. They're a cheap fix. I'm actually very curious to see what the fiscal impact will be for Governor Lee's proposal when we start to get some actual hard numbers coming out about, what's this going to cost to provide a public defender? What's it going to cost to provide mental health screening? This, I think, is a way for lawmakers to say they have done something without having to spend a lot of money, either reforming the mental health system, adding more public defenders to the rolls, adding maybe more judges to the rolls. This allows them to do something on the cheap. But I think at the expense of our rights, and again, at the expense of leaving dangerous people alone to do dangerous things.
Right. I mean, I guess, if the answer is involuntary commitment, I just wonder if there isn't some way that is every person who's a threat to themselves or others who has these mental health crises, is that sort of step of putting them in a facility the only solution, right? I mean, removing their access to firearms and mandating that they get mental health treatment. I don't know if that's how much different that is from involuntary commitment, I guess, in the first place. But if it's a more temporary solution, with a little bit of a reduced burden, I guess, on trying to, because one of the issues with involuntary commitment is it's very difficult to actually get somebody through that process, right? That's my understanding, at least. That I'm not as much of an expert on involuntary commitments and how hard they are, but my understanding is they're very difficult to actually do. And so that's where, is there some way to do that same level of process, but it's temporary, so the deprivation of rights isn't as severe. It's coupled with the mental health treatment that you're, I think, persuasively saying is necessary if you do believe somebody is that much of a threat to themselves or others. Is there some middle way there?
Well,
just not?
I mean, maybe another approach would be, instead of trying to, reinvent the wheel with a red flag law, let's just reform the involuntary commitment laws. So if it's too difficult, now listen, I'm a fan of all of our civil rights, not just the right to keep and bear arms. So
right.
I don't want to see a situation where people can get, locked up and involuntarily committed just because somebody says, oh, they said something that disturbed me. What I think we actually need, and one of the reasons why I think it is so difficult for these involuntary commitments to happen again is because we haven't funded the mental health system. There aren't enough beds to go around. You and I are in Virginia, where routinely individuals who are in crisis are sitting in jail cells, or they're sitting in ER rooms, for 24 to 48 hours with a deputy, by the way, sitting right beside them, unable to go out on patrol because there aren't enough spaces. There aren't enough beds available for these people. So regardless of red flag laws, that's an issue that needs to be addressed. But I think if we looked at this as a mental health problem, which is supposedly what we're doing here, then maybe an involuntary commitment shouldn't lead to a lifetime prohibition on the right to keep and bear arms. What if an involuntary commitment led to a temporary removal of your ability to own a firearm? But again, once you are no longer a danger to yourself or others, your rights can be restored. That to me seems like a much better way of approaching this than trying to shoehorn a red flag law into being able to negate the dangerousness of somebody while still leaving them out on the street. So, maybe we just need to look at it from a different direction.